Can Bitcoin double in price in the next few months, even before the halving? That's what we're going to talk about today on Crypto Intel. And stay tuned to the end, because I'm going to show you why I think this time the cycle is a lot different than the past cycles in Bitcoin, and how it is a possibility that we can see price action that we've not imagined in the past. Let's get started. Okay, so what I want to start with is, let's just take a look at where we've been in the cycles in the past when we have touched or broken the all-time high. Now, we did actually touch the all-time high on some exchanges, and on the BTC futures chart, you can see that, let me just make this a little bit smaller. You can see right here that we actually went a little bit above it. It's kind of hard to see, but we actually went a little bit above it, and then we went down, about 5 or 6%. And this is something normal that happens when we get around the all-time high. In previous cycles, it's taken us a couple of tries to actually really break above it and have a daily close above the all-time high. So we haven't had that yet, but we are touching against it. So what happens next, and where can the price action go? You can see that today we've touched the all-time high, we've come back, but in the past, let's just take a look at what has happened here. So you can see that this is the halving, the last halving in May of 2020. And you can see here's the all-time high previous to that, which was in 2017. And you can see that when we broke that all-time high, we went just about, right here is where we broke it, right? If you measure, we went almost 2.5 times what the all-time high was. So we went from roughly 20,000 up to roughly 65,000, okay? And in the previous cycle to that, if we look here, we can see here's the all-time high. When we broke it, when we broke the previous all-time high, right about here, you can see that we went up a lot more, about 13 times, okay? So 13 times, 2.5 times, it's reasonable to assume that we can go up at least one more time, at least to around maybe 1.5. And, I would say that's a conservative estimate, that we can go to 120, 130 within this next cycle. Now, the difference this time is that we're knocking on the door of the all-time high before the halving. You can see in the previous cycle, here's the all-time high from 2017. We didn't break that all-time high until well after the halving. The halving was in May. We didn't break it until, sometime at the end of the year. That was like 6 months. And in the cycle before that, here's the all-time high in 2013. We didn't break it again. The halving came in July. We didn't break that all-time high until somewhere around March of the following year. Right? So, July of 2016, we broke the all-time high in April of 2017. So that was even longer. So you can see that actually the amount of time that it's taking to go from the low and break the all-time high is shortening. It's getting much shorter. And so now what we can see is that we can easily break the all-time high before the halving this time instead of after the halving. Now, why is this happening? Well, let's take a look at a couple things. First, if we look at the Bitcoin macro index, we can see that we are really just in the beginning of the expansion phase. You can see here that in previous cycles, once we started the expansion phase, there was about over a year to a year and a half of expansion. Here in 2013 cycle, the same thing, over a year of expansion. And Now, in the 2021, in the previous cycle, we had expansion, but it was much more abbreviated. Okay, so it didn't go for, this one went from November of 2016 all the way to February 2018, well over a year. And this one, the last one, went from November of 2020 to about December of 2021, about a year if we count this. Okay, we did have kind of like a double dip there, and then went up again. So we can assume that this is going to be a little bit quicker than it has in the past. But we are just really beginning the expansion, and we are already at all-time highs. So that can suggest that it might not be that we are diminishing the amount of gains that we get once we break the previous all-time high. In the past, that has diminished. It has gone from 10 times to about 2.5 times. And now, if it is diminishing, we would think it would go maybe 1.5. But it might not. It might go more. Remember, we are only looking at 2 or 3 data points. That doesn't really give us the most accurate prediction of what's going to happen in the markets. Now, why is this happening, that we're quickening the pace? Again, you can see here, just by looking at what happens when we break the all-time high. Let's look at this bigger. You can see in 2012, straight up. In 2016, straight up. In 2020, straight up. Here's where we are now. We have a lot more room to grow, and it's very easy to see that we can easily get to 200,000 or even more in this cycle. But here's what I want to say. This is from Dylan Leclerc. The time it took BTC to double after the previous breaks of the all-time high. Look at this. In the 2013 cycle, 18 days. In the 2017 cycle, 84 days. In the 2020 cycle, 18 days. So you can see that it goes back and forth. There is no pattern here to how long it takes until we double. It could very well be that we double in price to 120, 130 relatively quickly, within 3 to 4 weeks. And if that is true, if that happens, that means we will double in price before the halving, not after the halving. Not only will we breach the all-time high before the halving, which has never happened before, but we could double in price before the all-time halving, which has never happened before. Cold-blooded Schiller says this. This is really interesting. When BTC broke the all-time high at 20, the weekly RSI was at 87, and it rallied 2.5 times, right, in the following 4 months. The pullback was after a 100% move. So, people who are looking for a pullback now, we might get a pullback, a short pullback, just like we're getting today, 5, 10%, maybe even up to 20%. But a big pullback, a 30% pullback, I do not foresee that that's going to happen until we at least double in price. That's what I think this is saying. Why? Well, it's because of the ETFs. And here's some news here. BlackRock files to purchase more Bitcoin ETFs for its SIO fund, which is the fund that they use. You can see right here. It's a fund that seeks to generally reflect the performance of price of Bitcoin by directly holding Bitcoin and include shares from Bitcoin ETPs sponsored by itself. Okay, what they're trying to do is have the best performing one in the market, leading to a surge of Bitcoin. And what this is going to do is, it's just another sign that the traditional finance community is having a lot of FOMO around Bitcoin. They know that the price is going to move, and they want to get in while they can. Now, will they try to manipulate things? Of course they're going to try to manipulate it. They're going to try to get the price to go down so they can buy more cheaply. That always happens. But one thing we can be sure of, Bitcoin is now moving more closely aligned with the regular TradFi markets, with the NASDAQ, with SPX, and so forth. So what that means, I think, is that the cycles for Bitcoin going forward, I think, is going to change. We're not going to have as drastic as dips as we had in the past. And we can already see that now, because so far in this cycle, we've only seen up to 20% dips. We haven't seen any 30% dips. And we might not see 30% dips going forward. Now, one other thing that we need to keep in mind as to why the price is moving as it is, it's because of the supply of Bitcoin shortening. This is what British HODL has to say. Once the OTC desks run thin on Bitcoin, magical things happen. So imagine this. They call their clients, they make offers. People sell because they want liquidity and have holding a Bitcoin for a decade until a point. And then when that point happens, then the ETFs have to go directly to the market. They have to go to Coinbase. They have to go to other exchanges and buy Bitcoin. And that really drives up the price. That's called a supply shock. Now, some people don't think that there will be a supply shock. And the reason is because as the price of Bitcoin keeps moving higher and higher, say Bitcoin gets to 100,000 in a few weeks, there are a certain amount of people who maybe don't understand the financial understanding around Bitcoin who are going to sell. There are going to be institutions who have bought Bitcoin for their portfolios, and once the percentage of the Bitcoin in their portfolio gets to a certain degree, they have to sell. So there is going to be Bitcoin available, I think, but there also is going to be less Bitcoin available than I think the demand is, and that's going to push up the price as well. Let's take a look at one more thing. This is from Rect Capital, and it's interesting because in the past, this is how the money has flown in the Bitcoin cycle. First, Bitcoin runs up, then large caps like Ethereum have their run, and this is what we're seeing right now. Ethereum, in the past, if we take a look at Ethereum here, you can see that Ethereum, even though Bitcoin, you can see here, Bitcoin has dropped right now about almost 6%, but Ethereum is still going up. Okay, you can see that. So Ethereum against Bitcoin is having a move up too. So what we can see from this is that money is starting to flow into Bitcoin. Money is starting to flow into large caps like Ethereum and Solana. Solana also is having a good run. If we look at Solana here, you can see that it too has been running well up, even more than Bitcoin has. So the money flow in the Bitcoin cycle is largely doing pretty much what it has done in the past. Bitcoin has a big run. It flows into altcoins, then it flows into some of the lower mid-range altcoins, and then into the low cap altcoins. So we can still assume that an altcoin season is coming and is on the way. Right now, in general, altcoins they're moving a bit, but a real full-blown altcoin season hasn't really started. It's just beginning right now. If we look at, let me just take a look at the total 3, which shows all of the coins except Bitcoin and Ethereum. And you can see that, we have broken this resistance line right here. This is the previous altcoin season right here. We have broken that. But we're just starting. You see, we've come back. We've almost tested it. So there is movement in the altcoins, but right now it's a Bitcoin show, and I think the first altcoins to move will be those in the Ethereum network. So if you want to look at a few trades, I would say you want to probably look at things like Cody, which has had it had a nice, a big run, but now it's come back. If it gets in between the 618 and this 0.76, I think that's a buy zone for Cody. This is in the ETH ecosystem. Pendle is another one that I like. Again, it's had a big run up, but it's now coming back to retest this resistance line, and I think it's probably going to go up from here. This might be a good one to get into. Okay, so that's it for today. If you like the content, please give us a like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you next time.